Deathwatch are back. Finally. After so many months of worrying about the detachment, about the army now being squandered into Imperial agents, we now finally have an actual proper index and army rule that has just come out for Christmas, or in their case, Grotmas. Now, we have some great detachments out recently, and I will make videos on them. I know I'm a bit late with all of them, but there is one crucial reason as to why that is. This isn't my full-time job yet. And in saying that, today's sponsor today is my need for validation that this is a good video. So you can please hit that like and subscribe button and help us get out of small channel hell so that one day we can promise to start making quality content. I promise.
Why the fuck you lying? Why you always...
Now onto the point of this video, which is the Deathwatch Index, not detachment. Index. Now, the problem with Deathwatch is that they've always kind of had like this... How do I phrase this? They were trash.
Alright, fire!
They were overlooked. Not many people liked them, and because their army rules were a little bit weak and a little bit too specific, they really went unnoticed for a very long time. And the problem was that their army roster and their list was very weak, and they had a lot of their roster, including Primaris units, that were sent to Legends, and despite the fact that they were still selling the model kits. No updates and no love from GW, which meant a lot of people weren't buying it. I was personally interested in the idea of Deathwatch getting their own shine, their own spotlight when it came to the Imperial agents, despite the fact that we all wanted it to be Emperor's Children. Yeah. And, like, I was excited for this, to the point where I bought the Combat Patrol and I bought the Watchmaster the day the Codex leaked. And then, of course, we all realized what the Imperial agents meant. The Deathwatch went from being their own army to being forced and squeezed into the Imperial Agents Codex to the point where you can only take 4 units, and they were stripped of everything that actually mattered to them and their own individuality. So the only 4 units you could take were Artemis, the Watchmaster, the Kill Team unit, and the Corvus Blackstar, which absolutely astounded me, because the amount of people that I had message me in our comments on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok saying their whole armies and years spending collecting and playing was in effect over. This whole move didn't make sense to me, because after this move we got an awesome short for Warhammer Day and featuring Primaris units taking on the Necrons. And then we had our first hard-hitting impression with the introductory mission and tutorial mission in Space Marine 2 storyline, and involving a deep backstory that everybody wanted to know what happened with Titus and his kill team and how that transpired, and just how interesting and badass they looked. The amount of people that I saw with that damned left arm and shoulder pauldron in the game, if I had $1 for every time I saw that, I'd be able to do this full-time. Like, this rekindled an interest in the community that people hadn't seen for a while. That's why I don't understand why people will say that my faction or my army won't get any attention or love because GW won't make money off of it. Despite the fact that if they actually brought out the most shit models that you could possibly think of, people will still buy them. Because they have us by the wallets. And this, like, genuinely rekindled an interest for me. I listened to the Shadowbreaker book on Amazon, and for the life of me, I could not find that comic book anywhere, to the point where I had to resort to other measures. So after the backlash, GW announced on Warhammer Day. Lots of you have gotten in touch over the last few weeks with your thoughts on the way that Deathwatch kill teams now work in games of Warhammer 40,000. Okay, we hear you. A couple of squads is not enough. You want to mobilize the might of a full watch fortress. While such deployments are rare in the 41st millennium, they are not unknown. And the Auto Xenos, and the Warhammer Studio for that matter, is not deaf to the many calls for aid. So we can confirm today that in December we'll be releasing a digital update with more options to take your Deathwatch army to the field and lay low the alien menace. Watch this space. So it's further proof that they can hear us and that they can respond to what we want and what we as the consumer, the customer, the player, the actual audience and the fan base need, which means that they haven't actively listened to anything else. Oh well, that's another video. But now, thanks to that, we've been given an early Christmas treat, and we've been given an index for Deathwatch players all around. And for the most part, I'm okay with it. Like, from what I've read, it's alright. I mean, it's almost exactly what we had in 9th edition with a couple of tweaks, but here's the thing. They are now their own separate army, they have their own army rule, and they have their own detachment rule. So they are officially a full faction, with the next one being obviously Emperor's Children. Okay, let's have a look at it. Now, after going through this a little bit, for the most part, it's almost exactly what we had in 9th edition, from what I can tell, with a couple of tweaks here and there to fit 10th. So their overall army rule is kill teams. Each time an attack targets a kill team unit from your army that contains models with different toughness characteristics, until that attacking unit has finished making its attacks, use the toughness characteristic of the majority of the models in that unit when determining what result is required for that attack to successfully wound. And if 2 or more toughnesses are tied for majority, use the highest one. This does not affect transport models, and kill team models follow the normal restrictions as on the transport model. So basically, I can somewhat assume that you say to use majority toughness characteristic, transports aren't affected, and they follow normal rules. As far as I'm aware, you cannot take any Marines from any other chapters. Fair. Now, because in terms of you can't take specific character models like Tor Garadon, Kavan Shrike, etc., etc. Now, because this is a full faction of Marines by themselves, there is no taking of any Imperial agents into this army, which I understand why they do that, but it still kind of annoys me because that we can't have a happy medium, because I do like the idea of being able to summon the interesting aspects of the actual Inquisition, such as Imperial agents or Inquisitors, and bringing them in. Now, I'm not saying that that's what they tried to do with Imperial agents, because that's not what they tried doing with Imperial agents. It's meant to be, from what I could see, they tried making at least 70% of that army to be Imperial agents and Inquisitors, with a little bit of an entourage of either Sisters, Custodes, or Deathwatch. I would like it the other way around. I would like a lot more Deathwatch with a couple of Inquisitors here and there to help out or support or give buffs, just because I perfectly think that that makes sense. And it just annoys me that we can't have that happy medium, that you can still bring Imperial agents and you can still bring a squad of whatever agents, whatever, but they give different buffs. And I know that may not work in a tournament style, but thematically it just makes sense to me, and I just would like to see it try and be worked in, but we can't take them. It's either take one or take the other. So if we have to choose, I'm going to take the Deathwatch. Now, there is a lot of restrictions. There is a lot we cannot take, and because the Terminators are on this list, it's because we're getting back the Deathwatch Terminators. So by the looks of it, you're restricted a lot with assault squad with jump packs, Devastator squads, bike squads, land speeders, relics, Terminator squad, scout bike squad, scout squad, sniper squad, tactical squad, Terminator assault squad, Terminator squad. Interesting. I don't think that's any different from 9th edition from what I can remember. Now, the detachment rule for this army will be Black Spear Task Force, which I'm very interested in, because that means that there might be potentially other Deathwatch detachment rules that we could have. So obviously we've gone through the restrictions. Now let's go on to the detachment rule, which is mission tactics. Now, I do like this. At the start of your command phase, you can select one of the mission tactics, which already, when an army has that kind of rule, it does have allow that kind of flexibility to work in. So that means that, and you're doing 3 games back to back, you can sort of mix it up depending on the enemy, as opposed to just having the same one repeatedly. Until the start of your next command phase, that mission tactic is active, and its effects apply to all units from your army with this ability. Each mission tactic can only be selected once per battle. So that means that you can't go from Führer to Malleus and then back to Führer again. So the thing with Führer tactics is that you can have sustained hits 1 ability, Malleus you can have lethal hits, and then Purgatus, if a critical hit is scored, you have the precision ability. Now let's go through the stratagems. Now we've got the one that all Space Marines have, which is Armor of Contempt, worsen the AP of an attack by 1. We've got Adaptive Tactics for 1 CP. As far as I can see, as I'm looking at the differences, it's basically the same, which is a little bit interesting, but it is a bit From what I can see, it's a little bit situational, and it really depends on who you're going up against. If you want to change from lethal hits to precision, but at the same time, that's also a bit of a gamble. So yeah, it's good for 1 CP. It's not that expensive. Now we have Site-to-Site Teleportarium for 1 CP, which is very good for like a 1 CP because you can give up to 2 kill team units that are not within engagement, the deep strike ability, get them out in strategic reserves, and then throw them right back in, which is very handy when you're trying to jump around the board a lot. Now, these are the special ammo stratagems of the Deathwatch, which personally, in my mind, is where they differ from the other Space Marines and where they have that kind of, special ability against Xenos because of their specialization, which is essentially what they are. They're all veterans, they're all specialists. Think of them as like the Marine SEALs in that regard. Now, we've got Hellfire rounds, 1 kill team in your shooting phase. Now have anti-infantry +2 and anti-monster +5, which is insane. You cannot. The only restriction is you cannot select any units that have already been targeted with either the Kraken, Dragonfire rounds in this phase. So that's just the phase though. So if you plan it out well enough for 1 CP each turn, you can just keep jumping from Hellfire to Kraken to Dragonfire. So that's the Hellfire round. Now we're going on to the Kraken round for another 1 CP in your shooting phase, 1 kill team unit from your army. Improve the armor penetration characteristic of ranged weapons equipped by that model by 1 and improve the range by 6 inch. And then the same restriction applies. And then with Dragonfire rounds, your shooting phase, 1 kill team, ranged weapons equipped by this model have the assault and ignores cover abilities. Same restriction as the others. These are amazing. You will not run out of any options to do here in your shooting. The only problem is that it's in your shooting phase. So the problem with that is that you have to focus very much heavily on staying back and shooting as opposed to melee. That's the only downside to this. Now we're getting into the enhancements for the army, which in my opinion is another area where they can show off their specialization skills. So the first thing we have is Thief of Secrets with 25 points. You can improve the strength, damage, and AP of that character's melee weapons by 1 at the end of the fight phase if 1 or more enemy models were destroyed as a result of a melee attack by the bearer. Until the end of the battle, improve the strength, damage characteristics of that and AP of that melee weapon by 2 instead. Very interesting, because the thing is that you need to put that on a strong melee damage instead, which is interesting because the other stratagems focus on shooting, so at least you now have some sort of balance for the melee. The next one you have is the Osseous Key, 15 points. The only downside is that it's a Watchmaster or a Tech Marine. Those are the only ones that can be affected by it. Where essentially you can select 1 enemy unit vehicle, and within 12 inches and visible to the bearer, that unit must make a leadership test. If that test is passed until the end of the next phase, each time a model in that unit makes an attack, subtract 1 from the hit roll. If the test is failed, that unit is not eligible to shoot this phase at all. And that is very interesting because with the Watchmaster and the Tech Marine being able to use that, you can target an enemy vehicle unit within 12 inches and visible to the bearer. That unit must make a leadership test. If they fail, they cannot shoot that phase. If they still pass, they still have to subtract 1 from the hit roll. So even if you pass the test, it's still imposing a disadvantage onto your enemy. And for 15 points, that's definitely worth it. And you've got the Tome of Ectocleides for 30 points. Only can be used on the Watchmaster and Captain. Once per battle, after you've selected your Oath of Moment, the bearer can use the enhancement, and it can select another enemy to be the Oath of Moment target. Now, here is the interesting part, is that it says here that it doesn't grant full wound rerolls like Oath of Moment does, as opposed to the other Oath of Moment wording. Still interesting, but it's just interesting that that's how they choose to do it. It's like, even though you get to do it again, there's still a drawback to it. And the final enhancement is the Beacon Angelus for 25 points. Basically, the models in the bearer's unit have the deep strike ability. In addition, you can target the bearer's unit with rapid ingress stratagem for 0 CP. So, again, great one to use. Really nice to deliver shooting. I would be very selective on who I would choose this for. I would choose this on one of your more either hard shooting or hard melee units, just because of how deep strike quick, and then how you have to be able to move around the board with rapid ingress on top of that, and how that would stack. Having a look at the point sheets and the data sheets, nothing has essentially changed. So basically you can take the Watchmaster, Captain Artemis, the Deathwatch Veterans, Terminator Squad, and you've got the Kill Team variants, which is Talon Strike, Fortis, Indomitor, and Spectrus. These are the only big squad units that we have at the moment, those 4. The ones we cannot bring are the Proteus Kill Team Cassius, and Deathwatch Veteran Bikers. I'm very happy that Primaris teams are back, but it's still a bit odd that Cassius's kill team is still not here, but despite the fact you can still buy it in store. So all in all, I'm very happy with this. Deathwatch are back in the spotlight where they belong, and they're getting a lot of more attention now. And the only issue that I have is that it basically feels like we've taken one step back to take 2 steps back, and that we've come back to where we were before, because not much has really changed with this index compared to the 9th edition, except for the fact we can't take certain kill teams. But it's nice to see that the Primaris are back into it. All in all, I'm very satisfied with this. I can finally use my Watchmaster, and I can finally bring back in this Combat Patrol box, and it can come out of the box now. The stratagems and the enhancements add a lot to this army, and I genuinely believe that they make it now viable and a very interesting army to bring out with. Definitely because of how selective it can be with its mission tactics, and then with the Teleportarium on top of that adds so much potential value to specific stratagems, as well as using the Dragonfire rounds, the Kraken rounds, or the Hellfire rounds. And because the Primaris units and their shooting profiles, it's going to make that these stratagem rounds hit real hard. All in all, I'm very happy now that GW have finally listened to us and the fans. If there's anything that I've missed, please let me know down in the comments below. I'm still learning how to play the game. It's just so hard to learn because of how many rules there are and how many overlapping rules there are, how many things go into Legends, how many detachments there are, how many different rules there are. Like, I've been playing one game for the whole time and I didn't realize that I had the heavy on it. But so please, if I've done anything wrong or said anything wrong, please let me know, and I'll try my hardest to correct it in the future. Me and the boys recently did a Deathwatch episode where we did the origins of Deathwatch, what it takes to become a member of the Deathwatch, and how it's basically run, who they go up against, and what they kind of weapons carry, and all that kind of stuff. So please go give that a look too. Thank you very much, and I hope you have yourselves a lovely day. Please like and subscribe.
For the glory of chaos!